Megan Thompson had always been the kind of person who preferred to stay in the background. She wasn't one for attention or drama, and she liked it that way. Life had taught her early on that keeping your head down and working hard was often the best way to get by. At just 22 years old, Megan juggled her college classes with a part-time job at a small cafe near campus. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills, or at least helped chip away at them. That's why when her phone buzzed late one evening with a text from her Aunt Linda, Megan didn't hesitate long before replying. The message was short and urgent. "Hey, sweetie, I've come down with something bad. Fever, chills, the works. Can you cover my cleaning shift at the hotel tomorrow? Pretty please?" Megan sighed as she read the words. She knew how much her aunt depended on the extra income from her job as a housekeeper at the Ocean View Grand Hotel. Linda had been talking about saving up for a new car, and missing even one shift could set her back significantly. Still, the idea of stepping into her aunt's shoes made Megan uneasy. Cleaning hotel rooms wasn't exactly something she'd ever imagined herself doing. But guilt gnawed at her. Linda had done so much for her over the years, helping with tuition fees, offering a place to stay during summer breaks, and always being there with advice when life felt overwhelming. How could Megan say no now? After a few moments of internal debate, she typed out a reply. "Sure, Aunt Linda, I'll do it." The next morning, Megan found herself standing outside the towering glass doors of the Ocean View Grand Hotel. It was nothing like the modest motels or budget hotels she'd seen before. This place screamed luxury, from its gleaming marble floors to the massive crystal chandelier hanging above the lobby. Every detail seemed designed to impress, from the fresh floral arrangements lining the reception desk to the soft classical music playing faintly in the background. As Megan stepped inside, clutching the borrowed uniform her aunt had dropped off earlier, she couldn't help but feel completely out of place. The fabric of the navy blue dress was too big for her slim frame, and the white apron tied around her waist only added to her discomfort. Her sneakers squeaked against the polished floor as she made her way to the staff entrance, drawing curious glances from the impeccably dressed guests passing by. "First day?" asked a cheerful voice behind her. Megan turned to see a middle-aged woman with curly brown hair and a warm smile. She introduced herself as Patricia, the head housekeeper. "Don't worry, hon, you'll get the hang of things soon enough." Patricia handed Megan a cart loaded with cleaning supplies and gave her a quick rundown of what needed to be done. Each room required dusting, vacuuming, replacing linens, restocking toiletries, and ensuring everything sparkled. It sounded straightforward enough, but Megan quickly realized that appearances were deceiving. By the time she finished the first room, a standard suite on the 4th floor, her arms ached, and beads of sweat dotted her forehead. Despite the physical toll, Megan tried to focus on the task at hand. She reminded herself that this was temporary, just a favor for her aunt. Besides, the rooms themselves were fascinating in their own right. Some guests left personal touches behind: a half-finished book on the nightstand, a child's stuffed animal forgotten on the bed, or a handwritten note tucked under a vase of flowers. These little glimpses into other people's lives kept Megan entertained as she worked. By mid-afternoon, Megan had tackled several rooms and was starting to develop a rhythm. That's when she reached Suite 1205, located on the penthouse floor, reserved for VIP guests. Unlike the other rooms, this one had an aura of exclusivity. The double doors opened to reveal a sprawling space complete with a living area, a kitchenette, and a balcony overlooking the ocean. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed the room in natural light, highlighting every speck of dust and fingerprint smudge. Megan rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She wiped down surfaces, fluffed pillows, and vacuumed the plush carpet until it looked brand new. As she cleaned the bathroom, she noticed a designer handbag resting on the counter. Curiosity tugged at her, but she quickly shook off the thought. Snooping through guests' belongings was strictly off limits, no matter how tempting it might be. When she finished tidying up, Megan did a final walkthrough to ensure she hadn't missed anything. Everything seemed perfect. The bed was neatly made, the towels folded into precise rectangles, and the air carried the faint scent of lavender from the complimentary soap bars. Satisfied with her work, she grabbed her cart and headed toward the door. Just as she was about to leave, Something caught her eye. On the desk near the window sat a small object she recognized instantly. It was her phone charger. Somewhere between cleaning the bathroom and organizing the desk, she must have accidentally left it behind. Groaning inwardly, Megan turned back to retrieve it. But as she picked it up, she heard footsteps approaching from the hallway. Before she could react, the door swung open and a man walked in. He was tall, with broad shoulders and dark hair styled in a way that looked effortlessly sophisticated. His tailored suit hinted at wealth, and his confident demeanor suggested he was used to getting what he wanted. For a split second, Megan froze, unsure of what to say or do. The man stopped short when he saw her, his brow furrowed slightly as he took in her appearance. The oversized uniform, the nervous expression, the phone charger clutched tightly in her hand. Then, without missing a beat, he smiled. "I assume you're the guest staying here?" he said smoothly, his voice deep and calm. Megan blinked, caught off guard by the question. Before she could respond, her mind raced through possible explanations. Should she admit she was just a cleaner who'd made a mistake? Or should she play along for a moment just until she figured out how to explain herself? For reasons she couldn't quite articulate, Megan chose the latter option. Something about the man's piercing gaze and commanding presence made her hesitate. Instead of correcting him, she simply nodded and forced a polite smile. "Yes," she replied softly, clutching the charger tighter. I forgot this earlier." The man's smile widened and he gestured toward the desk. "Ah, well, glad we found each other then. I'm Ethan Brooks, by the way." "Megan," she said quickly, hoping her voice didn't betray her nerves. "Nice to meet you." Ethan studied her for a moment longer, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. If he noticed anything unusual about her story, he didn't let on. Instead, he extended a hand which Megan hesitantly shook. His grip was firm but not overpowering, and for a brief second she wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. "Well, Megan," Ethan said, his tone casual yet curious. "Since fate has brought us together, perhaps you'd care to join me for dinner tonight? There's a lovely restaurant on the rooftop. I think you'd enjoy it." Megan's heart skipped a beat. Dinner? With someone like him? The idea was absurd, yet, strangely, appealing. Part of her wanted to decline politely and retreat to the safety of her ordinary life. But another part, the part that rarely spoke up, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to step into a world she'd only ever dreamed of. After a pause that felt like an eternity, Megan nodded slowly. "I'd like that," she said, surprising even herself. Ethan's smile grew warmer, and he inclined his head slightly. "Excellent. I'll see you at 7 then." With that, he turned and walked further into the suite, leaving Megan standing there, her thoughts spinning wildly. What had she gotten herself into? And more importantly, how long could she keep up the charade before the truth came out? As she wheeled her cart back to the supply closet, Megan couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change in ways she never could have anticipated. Ethan's expression shifted slightly, his eyebrows knitting together in confusion. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice calm but tinged with curiosity. Megan hesitated, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. The moment felt heavier than she'd imagined, the weight of her deception pressing down on her chest. She glanced at the ocean, avoiding his gaze as she struggled to find the right words. Finally, she spoke softly, her voice barely audible over the sound of the waves. "The night we met. I wasn't a guest at the hotel. I was working there, cleaning rooms," she admitted, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I accidentally left my phone charger in the suite, and when you found me, I panicked. I let you think I was someone else." For a few seconds, Ethan didn't say anything. He simply stood there, staring at her with an unreadable expression. Megan's stomach churned as she braced herself for his reaction. Would he be angry, disappointed, or would he walk away without another word? To her surprise, Ethan's face broke into a small, amused smile. "Is that all?" he asked, his tone light and teasing. "All?" Megan repeated, her eyes widening in disbelief. "You're not mad?" Ethan chuckled and shook his head. "Why, would I be mad? You made a mistake, sure, but it's not like you robbed me or something. Besides, I noticed a few things that didn't quite add up about your story. I just chose to overlook them because I enjoyed your company." Megan blinked, taken aback by his response. "You knew I wasn't telling the truth?" "Not entirely," Ethan clarified. "But I figured you had your reasons, and honestly, I'm glad you told me now. Secrets have a way of growing bigger if you let them sit too long." Relief washed over Megan, though it was mixed with a lingering sense of guilt. "I'm sorry I lied. I didn't mean to deceive you. It just happened. I guess I got caught up in the moment." "It's okay," Ethan said gently. "Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is how you handle them. And you handled this one with honesty. That says a lot about who you are." The sincerity in his voice made Megan's cheeks flush. She looked down at her feet, feeling both embarrassed and grateful. "Thank you for understanding. Most people wouldn't be so forgiving." "Well, most people aren't me," Ethan joked, earning a soft laugh from Megan. Then after a pause, he added, "So tell me more about you. The real you. Who is Megan Thompson?" And so they continued their walk along the beach, the conversation shifting to lighter topics. This time Megan shared pieces of her true life, the struggles of balancing school and work, her dreams of becoming a teacher, and the joy she found in simple pleasures like reading and baking cookies with Claire. Ethan listened intently, asking questions and offering insights that showed he truly cared. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Megan realized she felt more at ease than she had in weeks. There was no pretense between them now, just two people getting to know each other for who they really were. Over the next few weeks, Megan and Ethan grew closer. They spent time together whenever their schedules allowed, exploring different parts of the city and sharing stories about their lives. Ethan introduced Megan to fine dining restaurants, art galleries, and concerts she never would have attended on her own. In return, Megan showed him the charm of simpler experiences: a cozy cafe tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, a local bookstore filled with secondhand treasures, and a park where children laughed as they chased pigeons. Through these moments, Megan began to see a side of Ethan that went beyond his polished exterior. Beneath the confident businessman lay a man who valued kindness, loyalty, and authenticity. He opened up to her about the pressures of running a company and the loneliness that came with success. Megan, in turn, shared her insecurities and fears, knowing she could trust him to listen without judgment. Their relationship became a delicate balance of contrasts. Ethan came from a world of wealth and privilege, while Megan's life was rooted in hard work and modesty. Yet, instead of driving them apart, their differences brought them closer. Megan admired Ethan's ambition and determination, while Ethan appreciated Megan's humility and perspective. Together, they learned from each other, bridging the gap between their vastly different worlds. One evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking the city lights, Ethan turned to Megan with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about what it would be like to start fresh?" he asked. "To leave behind everything you know and build something new?" Megan tilted her head, considering the question. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But change can be scary. It's easier to stick with what you're used to, even if it's not perfect." "I know what you mean," Ethan said. "But sometimes taking a risk is worth it. Look at us. We come from completely different backgrounds, yet here we are. Doesn't that count for something?" Megan smiled, her heart swelling with warmth. "It counts for a lot." Despite their growing bond, Megan couldn't shake the nagging feeling that their relationship existed in a bubble. Outside of their private moments, their lives remained worlds apart. Ethan's friends and colleagues moved in circles Megan couldn't imagine belonging to, while her own world revolved around late-night study sessions and part-time jobs. She worried that sooner or later reality would force them to confront the challenges they'd been avoiding. Her fears came to a head during a dinner party Ethan hosted at his penthouse apartment. The guest list included some of the city's most influential figures, entrepreneurs, investors, and socialites, all dressed in designer outfits and dripping with confidence. Megan felt out of place from the moment she arrived, her plain dress and nervous demeanor standing out starkly against the opulent backdrop. Throughout the evening, she tried to blend in, nodding politely during conversations and sipping her drink slowly. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape the feeling that she didn't belong. When one of Ethan's associates asked about her career, Megan stumbled over her answer, unsure of how much to reveal. Thankfully, Ethan stepped in, smoothly steering the conversation in a different direction. Later that night, as they drove home, Megan finally voiced her concerns. "I don't fit into your world, Ethan," she said quietly. "Your friends, they're amazing, but I feel like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not." Ethan reached over and took her hand, his touch reassuring. "You don't need to pretend with me, Megan. I love you for who you are, not for what you wear or where you come from. If anything, you remind me of the things that really matter." His words brought tears to her eyes, but they also gave her hope. Maybe their differences weren't obstacles after all. Maybe they were opportunities to learn, to grow, and to create something beautiful together. In the months that followed, Megan and Ethan continued to navigate the complexities of their relationship. They faced challenges, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. But through it all, they remained committed to each other. Megan introduced Ethan to her family and friends, showing him the importance of community and connection. Ethan, in turn, encouraged Megan to pursue her dreams, supporting her every step of the way. Together, they proved that love isn't about finding someone exactly like you. It's about embracing the differences that make life richer and more meaningful. And though their journey wasn't always easy, it was one they faced hand in hand, determined to build a future that honored both of their worlds. Megan spent the rest of the afternoon in a daze. After leaving Suite 1205, she finished her shift as quickly as possible, though her mind was far from focused on cleaning. Instead, it kept drifting back to Ethan Brooks and the strange twist of fate that had led to their meeting. She couldn't believe she'd agreed to dinner with him. What had possessed her to lie about being a guest? It wasn't like her to deceive anyone, let alone someone who exuded such confidence and authority. As she changed out of her uniform in the staff locker room, Megan tried to convince herself that it was just one evening, one harmless dinner. Surely she could find a way to explain everything before things got too complicated. But deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. Ethan seemed like the kind of man who noticed details that might eventually expose her lie. And yet, despite her growing anxiety, part of her felt a thrill she hadn't experienced in years. For once, she wasn't Megan Thompson, the quiet college student struggling to make ends meet. Tonight, she could be whoever she wanted to be. Back at home, Megan stared at her closet, unsure of what to wear. Her wardrobe consisted mostly of jeans, t-shirts, and a few dresses she'd bought for special occasions. None of it seemed fancy enough for a rooftop restaurant at the Ocean View Grand Hotel. Finally, she settled on a simple navy blue dress with a modest neckline and paired it with silver earrings her aunt had given her last Christmas. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The dress hugged her figure in a way her usual clothes didn't, and her wavy brown hair framed her face softly after she curled it with an old flat iron. She even added a touch of mascara and lip gloss, something she rarely bothered with. By the time 7 o'clock rolled around, Megan's nerves were in overdrive. She arrived at the hotel 15 minutes early, clutching her small handbag tightly as she stepped into the elevator. The ride up to the rooftop felt endless, each second stretching longer than the last. When the doors finally opened, she was greeted by soft lighting, live jazz music, and panoramic views of the city skyline. Servers moved gracefully between tables, carrying trays of gourmet dishes and sparkling wine glasses. Ethan was already waiting near the entrance, dressed in a dark suit that made him look even more striking than before. He smiled when he saw her, his expression warm and inviting. "You look lovely," he said, extending his arm toward her. "Thank you," Megan replied, her voice quieter than she intended. She slipped her arm through his, trying to ignore how her pulse quickened at his touch. They were seated at a table, near the edge of the terrace, where they could see the ocean shimmering under the moonlight. A waiter appeared almost instantly, presenting them with menus bound in leather. Megan skimmed the options, her eyes widening slightly at the prices. Everything sounded delicious, but also intimidatingly expensive. She opted for the safest choice, a grilled salmon dish, and hoped it wouldn't seem too plain compared to whatever Ethan ordered. Throughout the meal, Ethan did most of the talking. He spoke about his life with an ease that suggested he was used to commanding attention. He told her about growing up in a small town, starting his tech company from scratch, and navigating the challenges of running a business. Despite his success, there was a humility to his words that surprised Megan. He admitted he often felt lonely, caught between two worlds, the fast-paced corporate environment and the simpler life he sometimes missed. Megan listened intently, nodding and asking thoughtful questions whenever she could. She found herself genuinely interested in his stories, though she struggled to contribute much of her own. Every time he asked about her, she stumbled over her answers, weaving together bits of truth and fabrication. She claimed to work as an interior designer, traveling frequently for projects, and mentioned living in a cozy apartment downtown. The lies came easier than she expected, fueled by the fear of ruining the moment. At one point, Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her, with a curious smile. "You're not what I expected," he said. Megan froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "What do you mean?" "I thought you'd be, I don't know, more reserved or formal maybe. But you're different. Refreshingly real." His tone was sincere, and Megan felt a pang of guilt. If only he knew how far from real she was being right now. The evening continued smoothly, filled with laughter and easy conversation. They talked about books, movies, and places they'd traveled, or in Megan's case, places she wished she could visit someday. Ethan seemed genuinely intrigued by her perspective, hanging on to her every word. It was flattering, but also overwhelming. Megan couldn't remember the last time someone had paid so much attention to her. After dessert, a decadent chocolate mousse that melted in her mouth, they lingered at the table, watching the waves crash against the shore below. Ethan glanced at his watch and sighed. "I should probably call it a night. Tomorrow's going to be busy." Megan nodded, feeling both relieved and disappointed that the evening was coming to an end. As they stood to leave, Ethan placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "I enjoyed tonight," he said. "Do you think we could do it again sometime?" Her heart skipped a beat. "I'd like that," she replied, forcing a smile despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. On the drive home, Megan replayed the night, in her mind analyzing every word and gesture. She couldn't deny that she'd had fun, more fun than she'd had in ages, but the weight of her deception loomed heavily over her. How long could she keep this up? And what would happen if Ethan discovered the truth? When she walked into her apartment, Claire, her roommate, was sprawled on the couch watching TV. She sat up immediately when she saw Megan. "Well, how was it?" "It was, Megan hesitated, searching for the right word. "Complicated." Claire raised an eyebrow. "Complicated how?" Megan sank onto the couch beside her and recounted the events of the evening, from the luxurious dinner to the effortless charm of Ethan Brooks. By the time she finished, Claire was grinning ear to ear. "Wow, Megan. This sounds like something out of a movie." "I know," Megan groaned, burying her face in her hands. "But it's not sustainable. He thinks I'm someone I'm not. What am I supposed to do?" Claire tilted her head thoughtfully. "Maybe you don't have to decide right now. Just take it one step at a time. Enjoy the moment while it lasts." Megan sighed, knowing her roommate had a point. There was no harm in savoring the experience for a little while longer, was there? Still, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that reality would catch up with her sooner rather than later. Over the next few days, Megan threw herself into her routine, hoping to distract herself from thoughts of Ethan. She attended her classes, worked her shifts at the cafe, and helped Linda recover from her illness. But no matter how busy she kept herself, her mind kept drifting back to that magical evening on the rooftop. She replayed their conversations in her head, wondering if she'd said anything suspicious or if Ethan had noticed any inconsistencies in her story. Then, out of the blue, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Ethan. "Hope you're doing well. Would love to see you again soon. Let me know when you're free." Megan stared at the screen, her heart racing. This was her chance to come clean, to tell him the truth and see where things went from there. But instead of typing out an explanation, she found herself responding with a simple, "Sure, how about Friday?" As soon as she hit send, she regretted it. Why couldn't she bring herself to be honest? Was it because she feared losing the connection they'd formed? Or was it because, for the first time in her life, she felt seen in a way she never had before? Friday arrived faster than Megan anticipated. She spent hours preparing, choosing another dress from her limited collection, and practicing what she would say. This time, she promised herself, she wouldn't dodge the truth. She owed Ethan that much. When they met at the hotel lobby, Ethan greeted her with the same warmth and charm as before. They decided to skip the restaurant this time and explore the nearby beach instead. Walking along the shoreline barefoot and bathed in the golden light of sunset, Megan felt a sense of calm she hadn't experienced in days. The sound of the waves and the salty breeze created a perfect backdrop for the conversation she knew she needed to have. Finally, summoning all her courage, Megan stopped walking and turned to face him. "Ethan, there's something I need to tell you." He looked at her, concern flickering across his features. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, bracing herself for his reaction. "The other night, when we met, I wasn't entirely truthful with you." Megan and Ethan's relationship continued to blossom, but it wasn't without its challenges. As much as they cared for each other, the differences in their lives became harder to ignore. Megan still worked part-time at the cafe and attended her college classes during the day, while Ethan juggled meetings, business trips, and networking events. Their schedules rarely aligned perfectly, and when they did manage to spend time together, it often felt rushed or fleeting. One evening, after a particularly long day of cleaning rooms at the hotel, Megan sat on the couch in her tiny apartment, staring blankly at the TV. Claire noticed her friend's exhaustion and sat down beside her. "You've been working so hard lately," Claire said gently. "Are you okay?" Megan sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm being pulled in two different directions. I love spending time with Ethan, he makes me happy. But our worlds are just so different. It's exhausting trying to keep up." Claire nodded thoughtfully. "I get it. But maybe instead of focusing on the differences, you should focus on what works between you two. You're both willing to meet halfway, right? That's something, I guess," Megan replied, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. Deep down, she worried that no matter how much effort they put into making things work, their lives might be too far apart to bridge. The next morning, Megan woke up early to prepare for another shift at the Ocean View Grand Hotel. She hadn't told Ethan about her decision to return to her aunt's job. She didn't want him to feel obligated to help her financially. Cleaning rooms wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, and Megan prided herself on her independence. Still, as she pushed her cart down the hallway, she couldn't help but wonder if this was the kind of life she wanted long-term. Later that afternoon, Ethan surprised her by showing up at the hotel. He had finished an unexpected meeting early and decided to stop by, hoping to catch her before her shift ended. When Megan saw him standing near the staff entrance, dressed in his usual sharp suit, she felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. She hadn't expected him to visit her workplace, and the thought of him seeing her in this environment made her uneasy. "Hey," he said with a warm smile. "I thought I'd bring you lunch." Megan glanced around nervously, aware of the curious stares from her coworkers. "Ethan, you didn't have to do that. This isn't exactly the nicest place to hang out." He shrugged, unfazed. "It doesn't matter where we are. I just wanted to see you." They found a quiet corner in the break room, where Ethan handed her a paper bag containing a sandwich and a bottle of sparkling water. As they ate, Megan tried to steer the conversation toward safer topics, avoiding any mention of her job or their differing lifestyles. But Ethan, perceptive as always, picked up on her discomfort. "You seem tense," he observed. "Is everything okay?" Megan hesitated, then decided to be honest. "I guess I'm just worried about how different our lives are. Seeing you here in this setting, it reminds me of how much we don't have in common." Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. "Megan, I know our backgrounds are different, but that doesn't mean we can't make this work. What matters is how we treat each other and whether we're willing to grow together." His words reassured her, but they also sparked a realization. If they were going to build a future together, they needed to find ways to integrate their worlds more seamlessly. Over the next few weeks, Megan and Ethan made a conscious effort to blend their routines. Ethan started accompanying Megan to her favorite spots: the cozy diner where she studied for exams, the park where she jogged on weekends, and even the community center where she volunteered tutoring kids. In return, Megan began attending some of Ethan's professional events, gradually becoming more comfortable navigating his world. One Saturday morning, Ethan invited Megan to join him on a trip to the countryside. He owned a small cabin there, a peaceful retreat he used to escape the pressures of city life. The drive took them through winding roads surrounded by tall trees and open fields, the scenery growing more serene with every mile. When they arrived, Megan stepped out of the car and breathed in the crisp air, feeling instantly relaxed. "This is beautiful," she said, looking around in awe. The cabin was modest but charming, with large windows that let in plenty of natural light. A stone fireplace dominated the living room, and shelves lined with books gave the space a cozy, lived-in feel. "I'm glad you like it," Ethan said, smiling. "I thought it would be nice to spend some time away from everything, just the two of us." For the next 2 days, they disconnected from the outside world. They cooked meals together, went for long walks in the woods, and spent evenings curled up by the fire, talking about their hopes and dreams. Megan found herself opening up in ways she never had before, sharing stories about her childhood and her aspirations for the future. Ethan listened intently, offering encouragement and insight whenever she doubted herself. On their final night at the cabin, Ethan brought up a topic that had been on his mind for a while. "Megan, I've been thinking about something," he began, his tone serious. "I know we've talked about our differences, and I understand your concerns about balancing our lives, but I believe we can figure it out if we're willing to commit to each other fully." Megan looked at him, her heart racing. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to take the next step with you. Whether that means moving in together, planning a future, or simply continuing to support each other, I'm ready." "Are you?" Tears welled up in Megan's eyes as she processed his words. She had spent so much time worrying about the obstacles between them that she hadn't allowed herself to imagine a future where those obstacles could be overcome. Now, sitting in front of the man who had shown her kindness, patience, and understanding, she realized she wanted nothing more than to build that future with him. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I'm ready." When they returned to the city, Megan and Ethan wasted no time putting their plans into action. They found a small apartment midway between Ethan's penthouse and Megan's old place, a compromise that symbolized their commitment to blending their worlds. Moving in together wasn't easy. There were adjustments to be made, habits to adapt, and moments of frustration, but they faced each challenge as a team. Megan also decided to pursue her dream of becoming a teacher more seriously. With Ethan's encouragement, she enrolled in additional courses and began applying for internships at local schools. Watching her chase her goals filled Ethan with pride, and he made sure to celebrate every milestone with her, no matter how small. Meanwhile, Ethan introduced Megan to more aspects of his professional life, inviting her to strategy sessions and brainstorming meetings. At first, Megan felt intimidated by the fast-paced environment, but she soon discovered that her perspective was valuable. Her ability to simplify complex ideas and connect with people on a personal level impressed Ethan's colleagues, earning her respect within the company. Their relationship became a testament to the power of communication, compromise, and mutual support. While they came from vastly different backgrounds, they shared a foundation of trust and respect that allowed them to navigate life's ups and downs together. One evening, as they stood on the balcony of their new apartment, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant hues, Megan turned to Ethan with a smile. "Do you remember the first time we met?" she asked. Ethan chuckled. "How could I forget? You were pretending to be someone else. And now look at us," Megan said, shaking her head in amazement. "We've come such a long way." "We have," Ethan agreed, pulling her close. "But I think the best is yet to come." As they embraced, Megan knew he was right. Their journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. Together, they had proven that love could transcend differences and create something truly extraordinary. And as they looked toward the future, hand in hand, they knew they were ready to face whatever came next, together. Megan and Ethan's life together in their new apartment became a blend of both their worlds. The space reflected their shared journey. Modern furniture chosen by Ethan sat alongside cozy blankets and books Megan had collected over the years. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, a symbol of how they were learning to merge their lives. Each day brought its own challenges, but also moments of joy and growth that made everything worthwhile. One morning, as Megan sipped her coffee at the kitchen counter, she opened an email from the local school district. She scanned the message quickly, her eyes widening with excitement. "Ethan," she called out, her voice trembling slightly. I got it. I got the teaching internship." Ethan emerged from the living room, still in his pajamas, and grinned when he saw the look on her face. "That's amazing, Megan. I'm so proud of you." She jumped up and hugged him tightly, unable to contain her happiness. For years, she had dreamed of standing in front of a classroom, helping students discover their potential. Now, that dream was finally within reach. Over breakfast, they celebrated with pancakes and laughter, talking about what this milestone meant for her future, and for them as a couple. The internship proved to be both challenging and rewarding. Megan spent her days crafting lesson plans, managing classrooms full of energetic kids, and navigating the complexities of being a first-time educator. Some days left her exhausted, questioning whether she was cut out for the role. But whenever doubt crept in, Ethan was there to remind her of her strengths. "You're doing great," he told her one evening after a particularly tough day. "These kids are lucky to have someone like you, a teacher who cares so deeply about their success." His words gave her the boost she needed to keep going. Slowly but surely, Megan began to find her rhythm, earning the trust and respect of her students. They responded to her warmth and patience, opening up in ways that filled her with pride. By the end of the semester, she knew she had found her calling. Meanwhile, Ethan continued to thrive in his career, though he too faced moments of uncertainty. His company was expanding rapidly, and with growth came new responsibilities and pressures. There were late nights spent reviewing contracts and early mornings preparing for high-stakes meetings. Sometimes Megan worried that his job would consume him, leaving little room for anything else. But Ethan made a conscious effort to prioritize their relationship. He scheduled regular date nights, even if it meant rearranging his calendar at the last minute. Whether it was dinner at a quiet restaurant or a movie night at home, these moments reminded them of why they had fallen in love in the first place. One Friday evening, Ethan surprised Megan with tickets to a weekend getaway. "Pack your bags," he said with a mischievous smile. "We're going somewhere special." "Where?" Megan asked, intrigued. "It's a surprise," Ethan replied, refusing to give anything away. The next morning, they drove to a secluded beach town a few hours away. The air smelled of salt and pine, and the sound of waves crashing against the shore greeted them as they checked into a charming bed and breakfast. For 2 days, they disconnected from work emails and social media, focusing solely on each other. They walked along the shoreline, built sandcastles like children, and watched the sunset while sharing stories about their childhoods. On their final night, as they sat side by side under a blanket of stars, Ethan turned to Megan with a thoughtful expression. Do you ever think about where we'll be in 5 or 10 years? He asked. All the time, Megan admitted. I imagine us still working hard, still figuring things out, but hopefully happier and more settled. I feel the same way, Ethan said. And no matter what happens, I want us to face it together. Their bond grew stronger with each passing month. They supported each other through setbacks and cheered for each other during victories. When Megan graduated from her teaching program, Ethan organized a small celebration with close friends and family. Seeing her walk across the stage in her cap and gown, tears streaming down her face, filled him with immense pride. In return, Megan stood by Ethan during a pivotal moment in his career. His company launched a groundbreaking project aimed at making technology more accessible to underserved communities. It was a cause close to his heart, and Megan could see how much it meant to him. On the day of the launch event, she attended the ceremony, cheering louder than anyone else when he delivered his speech. We've come so far, Megan whispered to Claire later that night, reflecting on their journey. I never thought I'd end up here, with him, doing what I love. Claire smiled knowingly. You deserve all of it, Megan. You've worked so hard for this. As the months turned into years, Megan and Ethan's relationship evolved into something deeper and more meaningful. They learned to embrace their differences, using them as opportunities to grow rather than obstacles to overcome. Megan introduced Ethan to the simple joys of everyday life, cooking meals from scratch, planting flowers in the backyard, and taking long drives with no destination in mind. Ethan, in turn, showed Megan the value of ambition and perseverance, inspiring her to chase her dreams fearlessly. Eventually, they decided to take the next step in their journey. One crisp autumn morning, Ethan took Megan to the park where they had gone on one of their first dates. Leaves crunched beneath their feet as they strolled hand in hand, the golden sunlight casting a warm glow around them. When they reached a bench overlooking the pond, Ethan stopped and turned to face her. Megan, he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. You've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You've taught me to appreciate the little things, to slow down and enjoy the moment. You've made me a better person, and I can't imagine my life without you. He knelt down on one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a delicate diamond ring, its sparkle catching the light perfectly. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down Megan's face as she nodded, unable to speak. Yes, she managed finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Of course, yes. They embraced tightly, surrounded by the beauty of the season and the promise of a future together. As they walked back to the car, holding hands and laughing, like giddy teenagers, Megan realized how far they had come since that fateful day at the hotel. What had started as a misunderstanding had blossomed into a love story neither of them could have predicted. Their wedding, held the following summer, was a reflection of their journey, a mix of elegance and simplicity, tradition and personal touches. Friends and family gathered under a canopy of twinkling lights, sharing in the joy of two people who had defied the odds to build a life together. As Megan walked down the aisle in a flowing white dress, her eyes locked onto Ethan's, and she felt a sense of peace she had never known before. In the years that followed, Megan and Ethan continued to navigate life's twists and turns, always leaning on each other for support. They faced challenges, celebrated triumphs, and created countless memories along the way. Through it all, they remained committed to the values that had brought them together: honesty, kindness, and a willingness to grow. Looking back, Megan often marveled at how fate had intervened that day at the Ocean View Grand Hotel. If she hadn't agreed to cover her aunt's shift, if she hadn't accidentally left her phone charger behind, if Ethan hadn't mistaken her for a guest, none of it would have happened. But as she stood beside him now, watching the sun set over their backyard garden, she knew one thing for certain. Sometimes the most unexpected encounters lead to the greatest adventures, and hers had been nothing short of extraordinary.